Picture a mother 2 million years ago, walking across an open savanna with an infant that cannot cling to her fur the way a chimpanzee baby clings to its mother's back. Your ancestors had already lost most of their body hair, and they had just started walking upright on two legs, which meant her hands were suddenly busy carrying food, tools, and firewood instead of a baby. So she does something you still do without thinking about it. She hums, a rising and falling tone, over and over, to keep the baby calm while her hands are full and her eyes are on the horizon for predators. That small, repetitive sound, made out of pure necessity, may be one of the oldest ingredients of music on Earth. Here is the actual mystery. Music does nothing obvious for your survival. It doesn't feed you, it doesn't warn you about danger, and unlike language, you can use it to say there is a lion behind that tree. And yet every human culture ever studied has some form of music, made with the voice, with the body, or with instruments carved by hand. So why would evolution build a species that spends enormous time and energy making organized sound for no direct survival payoff? The answer scientists have pieced together isn't that music was invented on purpose. It is that music seems to be a byproduct, an accident stitched together out of other adaptations your ancestors needed for completely different reasons. The first thread of that accident comes from paleoanthropologist Dean Falk, who studies the fossil record of early hominins. Falk noticed something strange about the timeline of human evolution. As your ancestors' brains got bigger, babies had to be born earlier and more helpless, because a fully developed skull literally would not fit through the birth canal of a bipedal woman. That trade-off between walking upright and giving birth to big-brained infants meant human babies became almost shockingly dependent for years, unable to cling, unable to walk, unable to do much besides cry. At the same time, those same upright walking mothers had lost the ability to carry a baby hands-free while foraging. Falk's hypothesis, sometimes called putting the baby down, argues that mothers solved this by setting infants aside and using rhythmic, musical vocalizing, something closer to a melodic hum than actual words, to reassure a baby it hadn't been abandoned. That soothing, sing-song voice you use with infants without ever being taught to do it, the one researchers call infant-directed speech, shows up in cultures across the entire planet with the same rising pitch and slow, exaggerated rhythm. It didn't start as art. It started as a hands-free babysitting tool built out of sound. That explains a source for musical sound, but it doesn't explain why humans eventually turned it into instruments, harmony, and shared performance. For that, you need physical evidence, and this is where the story moves out of theory and into an actual cave. In 2008, archaeologist Nicholas Conrad and his team were excavating Hohle Fels Cave in southwestern Germany when they uncovered a flute carved from the wing bone of a griffon vulture, along with fragments of others made from mammoth ivory. Radiocarbon dating placed them at roughly 40,000 years old, made by some of the earliest modern humans to reach Europe. These weren't crude noisemakers. The vulture bone flute had 5 carefully placed finger holes and a notched mouthpiece, engineering that required someone to plan pitch spacing in advance, the same way you'd plan spacing between piano keys today. That means by 40,000 years ago, humans weren't just humming to soothe babies anymore. They were deliberately building tools whose entire purpose was to make organized pitched sound. At the same time, they were painting on cave walls and carving figurines. Music had become something your ancestors were willing to invest real time and skilled labor into, even while surviving an ice age. So you've got an accidental origin in parenting, and you've got physical proof that early humans turned it into deliberate technology. The last piece of the puzzle is why your brain responds to rhythm the way it does, and that comes from the work of neuroscientist Aniruddh Patel. Patel wanted to know why humans can tap their foot, clap, or dance in time with a beat, something that sounds simple but is actually a rare skill in the animal kingdom. He found his answer in an unlikely place, a cockatoo named Snowball, who became famous for bobbing his head in time to music. Patel's research showed that the ability to synchronize movement to a beat isn't just about having rhythm. It is tied to vocal learning, the same brain wiring that lets a species learn new sounds by imitation, rather than being born knowing every sound it will ever make. Parrots have it, songbirds have it, and humans, who learn to speak by imitating the voices around them, have it too. Most of your closest primate relatives, chimpanzees, and gorillas, don't reliably synchronize to a beat at all because they don't rely on vocal learning the way you do. In other words, the same neural circuitry that let your ancestors learn language by copying sounds is the circuitry that also lets you feel a beat drop and instinctively move with it. Music and language grew up sharing the same wiring, like two rooms built off a single foundation. Put those three findings together and you get a strange but coherent story. Bipedalism made human birth painful and human infants helpless, which pushed mothers toward hands-free musical soothing sounds instead of physical clinging. Tens of thousands of years later, that same species had brains capable of vocal learning, the same skill needed for language, which happened to come bundled with the ability to feel and predict rhythm. And once humans had that wiring plus enough spare time and social organization, they started deliberately crafting instruments like the Hohle Fels flute to do on purpose what a mother's hum had been doing by accident for hundreds of thousands of years. Nobody sat down and invented music as an idea. It assembled itself out of parts that were built to solve completely different problems, keeping a baby calm, learning to speak, and predicting the movement of a group. That's why music still ambushes you the way it does today. You don't need training to feel a lullaby calm you down or to feel your pulse sync with a bass line at a concert, because that response was never optional or cultural in the first place. It is stitched into the same systems that let your ancestors survive infancy and learn to talk. It's why a song can make you cry before you've even processed the lyrics, and why soldiers march in step, and why a whole stadium can clap in unison without anyone counting out loud. You are running software that was never designed for music at all. It was designed to keep a helpless baby calm and to help you copy the sounds of the people around you. Music was simply what fell out when those two systems collided, and somewhere around 40,000 years ago, someone in a cave in Germany picked up a vulture bone and decided that accident was worth carving into an instrument.